please. Hello, colleagues. Welcome to the February session of Subworking Group 3.3 West Region for the Global Coalition to Address Synthetic Drug Threats. I have a few administrative announcements to get us started. Regarding private sector engagement, we have a plan to foster partnerships at the national, regional, and international levels across 6 industries: chemical, shipping, consignment, social media, e-commerce, and banking. In the future, we will also look at expanding those partnerships to the pharmaceutical and artificial intelligence industries as well. Now we have a 6-part engagement plan, beginning with the formation of national dialogues between governments and private sector companies. We invite you all to begin these meetings, initiate these meetings with your private sectors beginning in February. And from the US side, we have had our first meeting with social media companies on the 9th of February. We brought together Snap, Meta, and Discord to discuss how best to prevent drug harms, and formed what we are calling the Alliance to Prevent Drug Harms with youth that are on these platforms. Secondly, INCB is going to be hosting a meeting in Vienna, March 5th through 8th. It will be a Tech Against Trafficking forum where they will also engage the private sector. Then between February to September, we're looking at website exchanges of experiences where private sector companies can send us their experiences, and also recommendations, concrete, actionable initiatives that we can post on the website as well. Next, we will be looking at the discretion of our co-chairs, the invitation of some private sector partners to some of the subworking group meetings that we'll have between April to July, so that we can discuss private-public partnerships. And finally, any achievements that are reported by the private sector will be posted on the website, and we're inviting them to do so from April to July. Now, in terms of recommendations and the meetings coming up in March, I want to highlight that today's meeting is the final meeting of the second phase of our coalition, which is focused on sharing best practices as well as models. And we have received many requests for additional presentations from many governments. So we're going to be speaking with our co-chairs next week to determine how to best incorporate those requests for additional presentations. If you would like to present and share with us a national model or a local model from your countries, you'll see an email address at the bottom right hand of the screen, syntheticscoalition@state.gov. Please send us an email. Now, I also want to share with you all that we have sent all of the co-chairs, all 40 of them, the draft list of recommendations for their consideration and input. And these are also being shared with all of you by email. They will be presented on March 6th and 7th for discussion. We will, on those dates, we will have working group meetings. And so we want to make sure that you have these, and we're encouraging you to share these recommendations within your governments for further discussion, and then get back to us with any edits or comments. It can be in anticipation of the meeting, or it can be at the meeting itself on March 6th and March 7th. There will be one meeting for the East, one meeting for the West. Now, also, I want to share with you that these recommendations are not meant to be recommendations that you have to implement in their totality. We hope that you do, but you can choose which of these recommendations you are interested in implementing. The recommendations are also not meant to serve as an exhaustive list of potential recommendations. Certainly, you can have your own recommendations outside of this list and implement them as well. Now, if you're not able to submit recommendations in time for the March 6th to 7th meeting, it's okay. You may continue to post these ideas and recommendations on our website using the new feature that has been created for intergovernmental communication. So I want to also share with you the distinction between recommendations, initiatives, achievements, outcomes. We've been discussing a lot of these, but basically what we're looking at are very broad thematic recommendations that translate into concrete initiatives. Those are either projects, or they could be actions, or they could be policies that are taken. And those initiatives then lead to achievements, which we can start to document. What achievements are we making for the purpose of longer term outcomes, to actually show that the coalition recommendations have had a measurable impact and effect. Here's an example. A recommendation could be adopting a new innovative technique for collecting drug data. Okay, well, one initiative might be the adoption of the web application called Assist screening tool, or it could be wastewater analysis. And so achievements might be within those that 10 countries are now collecting assessments through this online platform, or that 8 countries have received training and mentoring on wastewater analysis. But what's the outcome? The outcome would be that now we have a new drug use trend that we didn't detect before and now can see, or that policy decisions have been informed by this data and we have achieved X, Y, and Z. So the idea is that we will have recommendations translating into initiatives, into achievements, and outcomes. And for the initiatives, I want to highlight that we now have on our website an initiatives menu, which is slowly being populated. We've received over 120 different menu items or initiative items. And so we just have a few of them up now for your consideration, but you can browse by subworking group or by theme. And what you'll see is a description of each of the individual items with some background. And at the very end, if it's an existing initiative, you'll see which countries are participating. And most importantly, you'll see who to contact by email if you are interested. Please don't contact INL or the Synthetics Coalition distribution list. Please contact directly those individuals that are listed as points of contact for the individual projects that are listed. In doing so, they will add you to the expression of interest. And I want to also highlight, this doesn't mean that there will be necessarily resources connected to all of this. We are at this moment trying to document what the interest is. And based on that demand, then different donor agencies or working with governments and international organizations will see how we could possibly manage the collaboration under this framework for each of these projects. So that was a lot of information. I apologize, but this will all be recorded and you can check later on that as well. Now I would like to turn it over to our co-chairs for subworking group 3.3, Giovanna Calderon and Justice Jeffrey Henderson. Thank you all so much.
Muchas gracias, Brian. Qué gusto saludarle nuevamente. Muy buenas
Thank you so much, Brian. It's a pleasure to greet you again. Good afternoon, good morning to all of you. It is a pleasure to have you here in Group 3.3 on imprisonment alternatives, which is a very important subject in this fight against drugs. And we'll begin our day to end this second session focusing on one of the vulnerable populations, women. And for this, we have a presentation by Mrs. Carolina Carvajal Saborío, the coordinator of Restorative Criminal Justice in Costa Rica, who's going to share with us about the legislation in Costa Rica and the restorative model for care in the criminal justice system, as well as some of the results of the first phase of a diagnostic study done in a gender policy project, which is developing with CECICAT. Carolina, you have the floor. And we'll hear what you have to share with us. Thank you very much, Mrs. Giovanna. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and share this information with you. Receive a special greeting from Costa Rica, especially from the restorative justice of the judicial power. And to tell you briefly what we're going to say today, we want to see what is restorative justice in Costa Rica with a gender perspective and the relationship that this restorative justice have with the alternatives to imprisonment in aspects related to drugs. I think it's important to mention that in our country, the restorative justice is a legally established procedure which by law 9582 on restorative justice, one can conceptualize it as a progressive solution within the conflict of human rights issues, promoting the restoration or recovery of the parties in social harmony. Based on this human rights idea, we have a better way to deal with gender perspective in criminal and prison processes, where what we clearly seek is to understand, identify, and visualize the different aspects related to women and all their dimension, heads of families, women who are in unpaid conditions, in poverty situation, or may even have a problem with the substance consumption. And there are interdisciplinary teams where the public ministry, the public defense, social teams, and the community all participate, which is indispensable as part of these restorative processes. It's also important, seeing this human rights perspective, that the restorative justice procedures are framed within what's known the legal, proportional, objective, inclusion, and support and control. The public ministry, the public defense, and the psychosocial teams must analyze a series of admissibility and viability requirements to determine that the conflict or the cause could be solved through this restorative process. The restorative justice is within a harmonic legal framework compared to the different rules in our legal order. The restorative justice law clearly has a human rights focus, including the treatment for drugs under judicial supervision, found under Article 42 and others under this restorative justice law. The treatment for drugs has a clear gender perspective, seeking to analyze and approach the intersectionality of vulnerabilities that could arise in women because of the very vulnerability is a possibility to approach it in an interdisciplinary, specialized, and comprehensive manner to respond to this disorder for severe consumption of drugs or alcohol. And this is related to crimes. Clearly, efforts have been made in the country to have a rule that can deal with women's conditions, trying to reduce the inequality and stigmatization gaps. There's also the possibility of imposing this drug treatment under judicial supervision as an alternative sanction in crimes related to drugs, such as the introduction of crimes in the prison centers. But the criminal rules in Articles 31 and 72 also refers to the sanctions as the gender perspective, where they call on the judges to review the situation when sanctioning the person of the vulnerability conditions of the women under these circumstances due to poverty or due to different responsibilities or other conditions. On this other slide, I show you an example of these efforts made in Costa Rica, where we have been known for the following of human rights and ratifying international conventions, where the constitutional room in its law of 008751 carry out an analysis stating that there has to be a review of the vulnerability conditions so that these people, or men or women, be in a position to find differential alternatives, not necessarily prison under for certain crimes related to drugs, including in many of the efforts of the restorative office, as well as the public defense in Costa Rica and the Costa Rican Institute on Drugs, and with the support of CICAD at the OAS and the financial support of the government of Canada, Costa Rica was able to carry out a diagnostics study, which is very important because what the country was trying to do, or the judicial system itself in the different entities of the government, is to have a clearer overview, to have a better understanding, to see whether there's a need to strengthen or implement or design alternatives to imprisonment. And the reality of the approach being used by our criminal system for women who are in conflict with the law. As part of the findings, we see that we have a harmonic legal framework, human rights with a true gender perspective and approach, which we've introduced since we've had the legal framework and the legal changes that have been implemented. And aside from these important findings, there are others where we'd have to assess the work and the possibilities for improvement. As some of the procedural practices, we could say that we use these findings under three circumstances: a review of the legal framework showing that we have a harmonious legal framework, but also a review of the procedures, interviews with the accused, men and women, and the interviews with the judicial system and the people from the health system and the civil society, showing that the procedural processes used show that there is trust in the justice system, where the defendants actually show that they were given possibilities or different alternatives. And more than half of the women were given the possibility to find an alternative measure or a different measure from prison to overcome their legal problem. But that as part of the procedural practices, we show the need to offer more training and analysis so that the people operating the system have the possibility of differentiating and understanding the vulnerability of many of these individuals. The gender perspective shows evidently that there is a need to rethink the gender perspective issue in the solutions found to the conflicts. But there are also very important aspects from efforts that have been made from the executive level. Take into consideration that there is a penitentiary model with gender perspective, which is something we've been working on, with a level of care for women. It's an interinstitutional network to offer women comprehensive care in the prison system for their families and their dependents. And there's also the possibility of a program called Cuenta el Desarrollo, Count of Development, which is to help the people, the family members of women who are deprived of their freedom. As part of the opportunities, there are those that are quite significant, such as what we as a country should begin to work on. And these are some very significant aspects, such as promoting and expanding the restorative justice approach as a solution to criminal conflicts, showing that even under the follow-up of alternative measures or compliance of alternative sanctions, the restorative justice offers a clear, a positive element following up on the person within the system and their compliance of the criminal process, always having the person at the center of the solution. As part of the opportunities, we also have the detection, the early detection of vulnerability. So very briefly, this is what we've been doing in Costa Rica with CICAD, the OAS, and the Costa Rican institutions, which are all very important elements, but there are other actions which have to be implemented in order to have a real gender perspective in the criminal system. Before expressing my gratitude, this is my contact information in case you wish to consult me, and thank you for the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Ms. Carvajal Saborío. So coming up next, we will be hearing from Mr. Cristian Hernández Alarcón. But before that, I would like to offer warm greetings to my colleague in this group, Judge Henderson, who is here with us. Cristian Hernández Alarcón was on the High Court of Justice in Punta Piedra in Peru, and he will be sharing highlights from the therapeutic justice program in Peru, as well as discussing the importance of therapeutic justice for minors. Mr. Hernandez, go ahead. You have the floor. Thank you very much for the invitation. I will go
And
ahead
my
and
apologies,
share
Senor
my
Hernandez.
screen.
My apologies. I'm sorry for interrupting. Senor
Hey.
Hernandez, you need to be in the Spanish channel. If you can please
Y
click the icon of the globe on your screen.
voy a hablarles
And switch
respecto
to
de
the
mi
Spanish
experiencia
channel.
en Perú en el programa de justicia
I'll be
terapéutica.
sharing Peru's.
Estimado colega, necesitamos que por favor se coloque en el canal de español.
Excuse me, colleague. We need you to get into the Spanish channel so that the. So I need to get into the Spanish channel. Yes, please. How do I do that?
En la parte de abajo aparece un globo terráqueo.
You'll see a globe at the bottom of the screen.
Un circulito que dice ahí.
Ahora sí estoy en español, ¿verdad?
There we go. I'm in Spanish now.
Tal vez los colegas de traducción me confirman.
Can my colleagues confirm that? Yes, I'm in Spanish.
Ok,
And please,
sí, perfecto.
please go ahead.
Estamos.
Ahora sí ya puedo. Ya, gracias. Muchísimas
Okay,
gracias.
all set. Thank you very much.
Entonces voy a nuevamente compartir la pantalla.
And so I'm going to share my screen again.
Voy a hablarles de la experiencia de
And so
Perú en el
I'll
programa
be
de
discussing
justicia
Peru's experience with this therapeutic justice program for youth drug and alcohol users.
Para poder implementarlo, hemos tenido que
To be able to implement this program, we've had to consider certain local contexts. First, we have a code on youths and children that regulates the criminal justice system for children who are between ages of 14 and 18. So this is the governing body, or this is the law that takes precedence for that group. But we also have some rules that have not yet been implemented that adds restorative justice as an approach. Nonetheless, we have found that within both types of penal codes, there is space for therapeutic justice, which would allow a system of monitoring through hearings. Although only the code for children has a restorative focus, the larger governing rubric can be interpreted to include both a therapeutic and a restorative approach. So we've heard about a restorative justice program, and our program centers on therapeutic justice with a restorative approach. And so we're centered on the well-being of our young drug or alcohol user, but we are still giving consideration to victims and restoring social peace. There's flexibility in the criminal justice system, and that has allowed us to review certain decisions that can be alternatives to incarceration, such as custodial sentences. This has allowed the gradual implementation of a system of hearings that makes possible judicial review of these decisions. And so in implementing therapeutic justice with a focus on restorative justice, these decisions by judges can be reviewed when we see problematic use of drugs and alcohol. And so we're able to offer support against addiction or even educational interventions. Thusly, this program allows more cases to be considered. And this would allow monitoring of a wide variety of cases. So we're able to monitor both children who use drugs and alcohol at the time a decision is made on their case. And because if it comes to incarceration, our reviewing that sentence allows us to channel that custodial sentence into some form of supervision, so that this person can be served through some form of counseling or socioeducational interventions. In the first phases of the program, we have seen some achievements and we have seen some continuing challenges. I think that it has been a great achievement to consolidate the support from all of these institutions who are involved in the program. This has come through not only awareness raising, which has seen key support from Psicatoya, as well as addressing challenges in the mindset. We have
Gracias.
had to reach
Go
some
ahead.
agreements.
How you getting show?
I'm hearing audio from another source. Sorry. Is everybody hearing me okay?
Sí, señor. Sí, señor. Creo que fue alguna persona con el micrófono abierto.
Yes, sir. I think that was somebody with an open mic.
Don Cristian, sí, se silenció. Adelante.
And so we've had to reach an agreement among judges to make clear to other stakeholders that it is not against the best interest of the child when drug treatment was dealt with as a part of their sentence. Because initially what the prosecutor's office felt was that we were going beyond the simple need for criminal penalties. And so through the agreement that we reached at the level of the judiciary, we were able to avoid these objections, discuss the topic, and then create the possibility that if after somebody is sentenced, for example, we had missed the fact that drug use is present, that can be taken into account, and that would not go against the best interest of that justice-involved youth. This has been key, and we consider it a milestone for overcoming barriers that stakeholders had in terms of their mindset. And we have been able to, at a intersectoral level, create a simple document that can be used within the context of restorative justice. And this has also allowed the development of different stakeholders' competencies, which has been shared through training or a workshop in the Judicial College. And this has also been shared among the upper ranks of the judicial branch, such that it could be incorporated into the body on access to justice that considers the vulnerability of teenagers who are in areas of conflict and are also justice involved. Phase 2 would be the expansion of this to other courts. Thus, I think the important milestones within phase 2, as seen here in my local court, initially in 2016, 2017, we saw a great rise in 2019, then we saw a drop in cases. Now, within the Superior Court here, we have 13 cases, but we are expanding therapeutic justice to other courts. All of the courts of Metropolitan Lima, where there are 7 of them, I'm not going to name them all, Huaura and Iquitos are also joining this program. In all of these courts, there's been a commission established. So chief judges, the heads of prosecutor's office, so the most important authorities for the place, but as a part of them, there is a technical team that actually implements the program. And so if a decision needs to be made strictly at the level of that local court. That is taken on through something contemplated in the implementation commission that exists to make these decisions. And this has had a positive impact because if there's a decision to be made at a national level, there's a national commission for implementation at the level of the Supreme Court where decisions can be made, which has allowed us to have a rapid implementation at this time. So there have been positive impacts from therapeutic justice with a restorative focus. So 1 minute. The positive impact has been that we are now working with adult drug users in my area. We have a project that's being implemented with a gender focus for women. That also looks at drugs and alcohol through a therapeutic justice lens. And throughout, we have had the support of CICAD, or as part of the OAS, and so we are now focusing on workshops for monitoring so that we can have a system that produces evidence that would act as a basis for reflecting on successes, failures, and lessons learned, such that we can truly consolidate best practices and improve what have been our challenges thus far. And so that is what I would like to share with you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Judge Hernández for sharing his experience with all of us. And so, well, I would like to share that both therapeutic justice and restorative justice have important points in common as alternatives to incarceration. And I will say that there is a link to Costa Rica's restorative justice website in the chat, and there you can find resources specifically focused on youth with a restorative and therapeutic justice lens. Coming up next, we will hear from Ms. Elisa Rubini, who is an expert and a leader on CCM, which is case care management. She works in the Institutional Strengthening Unit at CICAD within OAS, and she'll specifically be talking to us about concepts and methodologies within CCM, including multi-sectoral cooperation between social services, health, justice, in terms of the justice process and what results have been observed. Go ahead, Elisa.
Thank you so much, Giovanna. Greetings to you all. It's a pleasure to be in this session and to introduce you to case care management. As Giovanna said, I'm a lead expert on CCM working at CICAD, and my task today is to provide an introduction on the model of case care management. You might wonder what it is, why this name. CCM is an initiative and a curriculum that has been developed by CICAD, and the core focus of the model is to support and strengthening institutions in creating a multi-sectoral cooperation among justice, health, and social services to serve the population which is justice involved and have also a substance use disorder. The core focus is providing opportunity for treatment and also other social services that are needed along the justice continuum so that this population can embrace and continue in their recovery and also achieve a successful social integration. This model entails training and technical assistance for the design and implementing of this program. But first of all, let's have a look of what is the need that this curriculum and this program wants to respond. Member states and countries that are implementing alternatives to incarceration, they have opportunities of services, but sometimes these are not articulated. And so they fell short in responding to the needs of the population they serve. So case care management is supporting the creation of this multi-sectoral approach, which is a mechanism that brings together all the stakeholders so that they can collaboratively create a system of communication, of sharing resources, and optimize what they have at their services. How does it work, this collaboration? Every system has a particular focus, and sometimes they do speak different languages. So case care management creates a bridge so that they can collaboratively communicate and find synergies to serve the client. So how do you provide this connection? There are multiple ways, and the model details particular ways of doing that with embedded or cross-connecting collaboration, but the core focus is working with all the stakeholders. So identifying who the stakeholder in the process are, because case care management is within an alternative to incarceration program. So there are different stakeholders according to different countries. But here in the slides, you will see a graphic image of all the stakeholders. And it's really important to understand what they bring to the discussion. The justice system and the justice authority, they might have the priority to support individuals, not to go back, not to circulate among the justice system again and again. So being successful in complying and have this expectation of them sustain their long-term recovery, which might be also some of the goal of the health system. They want to provide the best treatment possible, which is evidence-based, is responding to the needs, and is supporting the individual to get better and towards their recovery. What is the need, or what is the ambition of the social and recovery support system? They also want to identify additional needs of the participants so that they can provide some linkages to these resources and enhance the opportunity for a long-term recovery. What is the need of the community? They want, in community, we have it all. We have families, we have parents, we have spouse, we have children that wants to have these individuals back to their full extent. So they might want to find ways of supporting the recovery and social integration, and they need guidance on how they can collaborate with all the others. And last but not least, the most important element of all is the participants. And I want to spend a little bit of time to try to understand the needs of the participants. This working group 3.3 look at addressing the needs of this population, which is in conflict with the justice system. So I think that this is the hardcore of all our work. How can we serve these particular participants? Everybody is unique in their recovery, in their life, but there are common patterns. And among these common patterns in these slides, we see some of the challenges that they face. They might be overwhelmed with all the things that are presented to them, and they might have also difficulty in prioritizing. So they have, of course, legal charges, history of conviction. They have health issues, sometimes core in mental health. They have, of course, a substance use disorder, but there are also other vulnerabilities that needs to be attended. So like poverty or the lack of economic opportunities, specifically lack of employment, lack of self-supporting mechanism, sometimes limited education, and they are indeed facing stigma, and they end up being alone and confused. The good news is that everybody is not 100% deficit. They also have a strength. And thanks to the case care management and the function that case care management implements, there might be opportunity for them to navigate towards their recovery and social integration. So what does case care management do in practice? They support this function that they are helping all the institutions and individuals to get to the point and respond to their needs. First of all, there is a screening, which is identifying whether the participants has a substance use disorder, and then is leading to a full extent of assessment where not just the substance use disorder, but also all the other areas that we mentioned in the previous slides would be assessed in order to provide the best picture ever to go into the planning. Planning is not just filling boxes on what is needed, but engaging in a real conversation with the participants to find a common plan, which is not just a treatment, but is a treatment and service plan that is consensuated, where the individual is fully informed and is part of the planning. Then comes the linkages with the resources that have been identified based on the reflection and the work that is done on the planning to connect the individual with the services. And then goes on with ongoing monitoring, which is essentially following up after the referral with the individual, with all the services, and with all the actors that we've seen in previous slides, so that there is a common work and a common understanding of what the priorities are, what are the progress, what are the challenges, and if there are setbacks, they are not taken as a failure, but they are taken as a need for more intense attention and care. And that brings also to engagement and advocacy, that are cross-cutting issue that the case care manager is going to do throughout all the program to provide this information to all the stakeholders, touching base, informing on the process, and see if any modification is needed to achieve the purpose. There is also an embedded evaluation in the case management model. We insist a lot on this aspect because it's particularly important to have and to collect indicator and data that are meaningful to the project, and they are purposeful for the individual and for the organization that are running the case management services. And that leads to hopefully a succession completion, which is based on the baseline starting point and the results that individuals achieve throughout all the program. So before concluding, I would like to mention that the case care management model it finds application along and opportunity along all the continuum of the justice system. Although many of the country identify an opportunity during the re-entry that could be under parole, probation, there are opportunity to implement the model at all the intersection with the justice system. So from pre to during to post sentencing moment, there are opportunity to implement the model. And to conclude, I want to just mention a few achievements so far. As OSCCAD, we are always focused geographically on the Americas, but the curriculum that we elaborated has been published and is available in English and Spanish, and there is a link in our website to the publication. We have been promoting the training in Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Costa Rica to date. New trainings are soon to be completed for Colombia and Dominican Republic. We supported the pilot training in Trinidad and Tobago, which is the only country so far who have implemented and successfully concluded the 2 years pilot. And we are in the process of creating the training for adolescents. Colleagues from the United Nations and ICATI are also supporting the promotion of the curriculum internationally, and sensitization and training have been held in Kenya and in the Philippines. And I want to conclude that we all stand united with the support of INL to disseminate this curriculum and technical assistance to countries who are interested in knowing more and implementing the model. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, Elisa.
Thank you, Elisa. Thank you so much for mentioning this program. And you talk about vulnerable population as women and underage children. Of course, for us, it's very important to have this comprehensive approach. Now we will start with the Q&As, but before that, we'll have the representative of the Ministry of Trinidad and Tobago.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much. I would just like to speak very briefly on what has transpired with case care management in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago was engaged in the conceptual development of CCM in Washington, D.C. in April of 2019, and was the first country to pilot the curriculum in 2020. This, of course, did not happen by accident, but it was an amazing collaborative effort. Thanks to CCAD's technical assistance, the financial support from INL, and the partnership established with the Ministry of National Security, the Probation Services Division was assigned the role of project manager for implementation of the CCM and launched a 2-year pilot project in September of 2021 with the approval of the Cabinet of Ministers. This validation affords a measure of sustainability of the project and will make it a lot easier to secure funding in the future if the need arises. However, at the time of the launch, there was no new cost to government for the program, as existing resources of the Probation Services Division were used. 2 senior managers and 4 junior managers provided national coverage in Trinidad and Tobago for the CCM program. To facilitate the smooth implementation of the program, the following was undertaken. Firstly, we partnered with more than 16 organizations, including government ministries and institutions, the Judiciary, as well as civil society organizations, to create a multi-sectoral oversight team to support the interinstitutional cooperation detailed by the CCM model. We ensure that members had decision-making power so that decisions were made in real time. Additionally, as this was a new initiative, we invested in creating operational documents and developing databases for clients and service providers. These service providers were already engaged by probation services in their day-to-day operations, so it was very simple. We included a mentorship program and received training and support for 2 groups of mentors, thus adding an additional layer of care for recovery and social integration. There's also an electronic register for the mentors. We established a point system for graduation and a mechanism for monitoring and evaluation at each stage of the process. As a result of our pilot, completed in September of 2023, 13 clients successfully graduated from the program, and currently 20 clients are still receiving our attention and support. We are proud to confirm that Trinidad and Tobago is continuing the CCM initiative beyond the pilot and currently training new CCM managers to secure continuity and expansion. We are deeply grateful for the support received from CCAD and INL in making this possible, and we look forward to continuing our work and sharing our experiences with more countries interested in this model. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias. Qué números tan
Thank you so much. This is very, very good news. We know that 1 person that has been recovered is worth it, and you have fantastic numbers. So we are going to hear from South Africa, the investigator, Dr. Selmon Mashabela. You have the floor.
I first wanted to take an opportunity to thank the organizers for inviting my country, South Africa, and to share 1 or 2 of the things that they do in relation to this important area that affects women, particularly those that are behind bars. So I'm trying to see if I can share my presentation quickly, and let me be advised if it's visible on your side. I'm just going to run through the slide quite quickly.
And we can see your presentation. You may want to move it into the slide mode and proceed. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. As a country, we just want to raise the point that the data on true extent of drug use and abuse, particularly on women in the country, is not available. So we do not have the disaggregated and systematic data that we collect. So it is really going to be information that I share with you based on what is available at the moment, but it's not really a national data that we do have. But also, there is an issue that we want to raise about the consistent application of the measures as it affects women, especially those that are using drugs. And to confirm that we did conduct an assessment in partnership with the United Nations Office, the ROSAF, on the alternative to conviction measures that are particularly affecting women in my country. And this assessment was focused on the relevant national laws. We looked at the national laws, the policies, and the practices, and we identified the legal and the policies using alternative to incarceration. And our focus was really on women who were arrested and detained for drug offenses. So that was the focus. And the objective really was to gain a baseline understanding to guide planning and future technical assistance that we may require. Now, when you look at my country, for example, we do believe that there is sufficient laws and the policies that safeguard persons who are in contact with the criminal justice system. So from the law point of view, we want to believe that that's sufficient. And legislation also, provides for committal for treatment centers after conviction, not necessarily for women, but for everybody. All what you are saying is that these policies are not genderized. Now, an example that we are currently using is that the National Commissioner of Prisons, has got the power through the law to convert a prison term for women, for example, to correctional supervision when he's convinced that the sentence, for example, the person that has been sentenced is unable to pay fine or really doesn't have money to pay for whatever else that is being dictated to by the court. So that is provided for in the law. However, we want to just raise the issue that in my country, non-custodial measures really needs to be considered at every stage of the criminal justice system, because at the point that we are talking about here is really the tail end of the criminal justice system. Now, when you look at the statistics around the prison in my country, that of course we admit that prisons have been designed primarily for men, and there are about 243 correctional centers in South Africa, and our inmate population is about 150,000. Now, when you look at the occupancy levels, is quite high, and the overcrowding levels are also very high. But we are very grateful that if you look at the number, there's fewer women who are serving sentences from all that you have seen. It's really less than 2% of that prison population, if you think of it. But we do want to acknowledge that due to issues of overcrowding, there's even a more urgent need for us to use these alternative incarceration measures, particularly when it comes to women. So from the increase of the prison statistics over the past decade, we've seen the use of imprisonment has had little impact in terms of reducing or controlling crime. Now, there are some alternative to incarceration or ATI measures that we're using. All of these are applicable by country, like committal to an institution for treatment for those who've got SUD problems, fines, community service orders. We use all of these. However, I must just caution that getting statistics on each of these measures at the moment is proving to be very difficult because we don't have that systematic data to collect, a systematic system to collect data in relation to each one of these measures that are being flighted at the moment.
Estimado Pelmos, vamos a darle un minuto más para poder...
Dear Belmont, we will have only 1 minute because we have to have time for questions and answers, if you don't mind.
No, not a problem. In terms of what we have done for women in my country is that we have now converted, in line with the Bangkok rules, one of the facilities emanating from the assessment in Pretoria to be a fully fledged female prison in which we want to implement those Bangkok rules. So we have now moved most of the women out of the male prisons into a prison that we are now customizing it to be a feminine, gender responsive facility. And this is in response to the Bangkok rule. So that will be the maybe where I can conclude my presentation. And of course, there are one or two recommendations that we would have loved to prefer to this meeting. However, all we want to say now is that we will use this concept, this demonstration site for the women facility, as a site where we want to see how to entrench and really anchor the alternative to incarceration and deal with women who are in contact with the criminal justice system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing from South Africa. I would like to ask a very specific questions regarding the challenges for the application of the CCM. I don't know if Elisa, you can give us an answer to that.
Thank you. I believe that based on the implementation of the program so far, the most difficult part is starting. It means bringing together all the actors and explaining and really going through all the benefits of the model. Once this partnership is established and all the different stakeholders understand the potential of the model, then all the things will roll out with a good planning and with the of course establishment of protocols and operational guidelines and all the things. But I think that partnership is crucial to make sure that everybody is really on board and supporting in this multi-sectoral cooperation. And of course, the role of strengthening institution in doing so and understanding the beneficial of this effort. Thank you, Giovanna, for the question.
Muchísimas gracias, Elisa. Así damos por...
Thank you very much, Elisa. I don't know, Brian, if you want to add something else, but I think that we should close right now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Giovanna and Justice Henderson, for today's meeting. This was very productive and a wonderful discussion. I just want to share with everyone that the next meeting, we'll not have sub-working group meetings of the coalition during the month of March, but we will have working group meetings. So again, we invite you all. There will only be one working group meeting per working group. So working group 3 will have one single meeting, and that will be a 1-hour meeting on the 6th of March. So please take a look at those recommendations and get back to us with additional thoughts. And we look forward to having that discussion in just a few weeks. But thank you all for today's session, and thank you for your commitment to participating in the Global Coalition meetings. Take care, everybody.